Hello, and thank you for joining us here at Digital Virtuosity for our conversation today, 6 Steps to Staffing for a CDP. I'm Dustin Horning. I'm the Director of Customer Solutions and Delivery here at Tealium. I've been working with marketing SaaS software, implementing it specifically for the last 9 years or so now, and the last 2 here at Tealium.
Yeah, and hey, hi, I'm Richard Morrow. I'm Director of Customer Success in the US for Tealium, and I've had the pleasure of working here for over 4 years.
So what are we going to talk about today? I think for most of the presentations here at Digital Virtuosity, they focus a lot on why and how presentations, which makes a lot of sense. Those are super important to understand the value and the process that people have gone through to get value out of CDP and Tealium products. Today's conversation around staffing is really more of a conversation around who. And that really is exciting to me because that means it's a conversation about people. And people is really what this is all about anyways, especially, you know, a customer data platform is about changing your marketing approach so that you're putting it as a person in the center and making it an individual and customized experience for where that person is at. And in the same way, it's the people who are implementing the CDP who are going to be an important part in evaluating the staffing needs. So at a high level, we broke it down into 6 steps. Number 1 is going to be identifying and assembling your key stakeholders, really getting everyone that you need who's going to be able to either direct the vision or that you're going to need buy-in and resources from, or who's going to be involved in the actual implementation of the CDP. Step 2 is to evaluate the stakeholders that you've assembled and really categorize them into where they fit in the process, to understand where it's going to be important for them to be involved in the decision-making and the evaluation of the tasks and responsibilities of who's involved. Step 3 then is aligning on the vision and the priorities and of what's going to be accomplished with that CDP. Educating the people who may not be aware of the possibilities that become available through CDP technology, and understanding what are the goals and the projects and the priorities that are already in flight that we will become part of that process. Step 4 is translating those high-level visions and goals into the actual tasks and responsibilities, the things that need to get done, and most importantly, assigning ownership to those things in a really systematic step-by-step manner to make sure nothing gets left. We recommend the RACI method. We're going to be talking more about that. Step 5 is going to be what's next. You've implemented, you've gone through, you've followed the RACI through and through, you've implemented your CDP. How do you know it's working? How do you know what to do next? How do you handle the requests that you're going to get of people who want to be doing things with it? And then step 6 is continuing to build out those teams, understanding the structure of the people that you have in place now and where you have opportunity to grow those teams and what those titles and positions might look like. So jumping in, like I said, number 1 is identifying and assembling the key stakeholders. There's a number of things to focus on here, but some high-level keys that you want to be considerate of is, you know, representation is key. You really want to make sure you have people from cross departments and cross organization who are going to be involved. The worst thing that could happen here in this step is if you miss someone who you're really going to have to depend on, who's really going to have to assign resources to this project, and you really never got their sign off or they're okay here. Another thing to consider is that it's really more than likely that for the roles and responsibilities and the tasks that we're going to outline, that one person is going to be responsible for more than one area. They're going to have to be able to bridge that gap between what's required and what we're laying out as different sort of requirements. And then the third thing is you want to make sure for the people who are involved that they're at the right level for understanding and having the knowledge coming into this that's going to be relevant to what we're doing. The people who know the sources of data and who know the channels and the software that's in place now so that they'll be equipped to connect those pieces. So you want to really balance the position in the hierarchy of the people you're targeting for your stakeholders, that they have enough authority to make the decisions that are going to need to be made throughout this process, but they're also close enough to the day-to-day use of the data that they'd be able to understand and anticipate the challenges that might come. And in a lot of cases, this might actually be someone outside of your company. So the agencies that you're working with, the external vendors and contractors, these are people that you are going to want to consider early in the project as stakeholders to make sure that this isn't happening in a silo from what they're working on, but that we're working in tandem and working towards a common goal together so that it's ready to integrate with whatever that agency is working on already. So having those people in mind, you want to see where they plug in to the process and how we break them down at a high level into these 4 categories. You have your data source experts. These are going to be the people who are responsible for where the data comes from into the CDP. You have your channel experts. These are going to be the people who receive the data out of the CDP, who are expecting these segments and the data set of the individual profiles in order to enhance the marketing software that it's going to, or the database tools. In between those, you have the customer experts. These are going to be the people who know what to do with that data in its raw form when it's coming in, know how to aggregate it, how to enrich it, and how to send it out to where it needs to go. Running across all of those, you have your marketing technologists and your agency partners who can really be end-to-end on that, or take up sort of a larger chunk of just one of those categories. So your data source experts, these are going to be the people who are responsible for those touch points where your customers are engaging with your brand, your website, your mobile app, your CRM data, your database analysts, the people who are able to send the data that you have now or pass along the behavioral data that's able to be collected on the customers that you're interacting with right now. This is probably the most common stakeholder that I've seen left out of conversations, especially early conversations for CDP. And I think that's a big mistake. The buy-in that you can get from a data source owner is going to be critical in making sure that you have a smooth delivery path for getting the data into the CDP. And it is buy-in more than just approval or sort of awareness, because you really want someone who is excited about what the CDP is bringing to the business and potentially to their team directly. So with that, I would say there might be a few key pieces to keep in mind when bringing up the idea of a CDP to a data source owner as a stakeholder, in ways that you can present this so that it's relevant and advantageous to them. So, for one thing, a CDP, when it's set up correctly, is going to be a consolidated location to send data. So ideally for these data source owners, instead of having to send data out to multiple vendors and multiple software endpoints, they'd be able to consolidate some of that to the single CDP endpoint. And then that CDP would be able to disperse it out to the areas that it needs to go. So that's going to be easier to maintain for that data source owner. The second piece is that it's going to give their data source better visibility and recognition into the marketing efforts and the conversion efforts that are happening with their customers. A good CDP is going to be able to track back the channel and the source that a conversion and a person came from to understand where those data sources, where the mobile app or the website has great success in bringing value to the marketing team, to the company as a whole. And the third piece is that a CDP can, in a lot of cases, actually funnel that data back around in a profile sense to that data source and allow opportunities for things like personalization. The customer experts, these are key. These are often the people driving the want and the need for a CDP in the first place. These are the people who understand data at a level where they're able to tie it back to a user experience, who are eager to see the reports and the charts and the graphs that come out of marketing software and use that to learn more about how their programs are doing, how their customers are experiencing the brand. to put it simply, this is probably most of you who are watching this and a part of this digital virtuosity experience. The people who are able to, in one sense, take data and turn that into a customer story. It's not just a series of events, but it's someone's experience with who you are as a brand. And then they're also able to bridge that gap between technical and non-technical teams. They can take the technical issues or concerns or requests that come up from the technical teams and are able to relay that back to the business owners in a way that they can understand really what that means from how it impacts them. And maybe more importantly, they're able to take what could be, really buzzwordy business requirements that are hard to really put into a tangible sense and translate that into a practical request to these technical teams in a way that they understand how to make the changes that they need to fulfill these business requirements. And then the channel experts. So these are going to be the people who are on the receiving end of what's coming out of the CDP. And so these are going to be your channel managers who are in charge of your social media, your email, your CRM, your database people and analysts who are hungry for this new data sources, or the different channels who are really eager to see how they can do different segmentation options, how they can learn who they don't need to target with these ads or with these campaigns so that they can focus more accurately on the people who really are interested. These are going to be the people who really drive the vision from a high level. Because if we don't get it to a state where it's usable coming out of the CDP, then there's really no point in getting it into the CDP and segmenting it and enriching it in the first place.
So hopefully now you have a better idea who your stakeholders could be or should be within your organization. I imagine that you're kind of thinking about, there's a lot of people who I need to get together. I need to get them on the right path. Let's call it herding cats, right? So in order to do so, we expect you and your team need to understand the path for not only understanding, which we would call education, but then also taking that information, that what they need to go through with the CDP or what the journey they're about to embark on, provides alignment so that there's better adoption and ultimately expansion as you begin to use more of the CDP moving forward. Part of that process, and it's really important, that you must educate, motivate, and align them, right? We do this a lot of times even with net new employees, where you have to help them understand what they're going to do. You have to get them excited about what they're going to do and ultimately set them on the right path so that it's aligned with your internal organization. And really adopting a customer data platform or expanding upon it requires the same steps. Our suggestion is that you conduct exploratory interviews. What these do is allow you to get key input and have a unified understanding of the strategic objectives, the challenges you may run into, the constraints of all the stakeholders or teams that you're going to need assistance from. What are the competitive imperatives that you must not only understand, but also make sure that you are establishing how to defeat those, as well as the current and planned capabilities that you wish to grow into. These are all key things that everyone who is a stakeholder from a business unit within a customer data platform has equal information or input, so that it's well understood all the benefits that you could get out of it and all the work that it'll take to go into it in order to get there. From here, we expect that by all the goodness that you've gathered, you should be able to map project objectives to strategic goals in order to move forward with gaining that stakeholder alignment. Now, a critical step, and Dustin kind of elaborated to some of this, is that as you develop your CDP plan, you're going to need to determine who are the key stakeholders, but ultimately for the part of assigning roles and responsibilities to everyone who's going to partake in this journey. These roles are understood that they're going to evolve. It may not involve everybody at the same time, but by outlining the steps, adding it to milestones, adding it to timelines, people have a lot of clarity around when they're going to be needed, when they're required to complete the task so that you can get to the next step along the journey. As you determine the strategy, you're going to understand and identify the tasks that need to be executed a lot much better so that you can involve all the stakeholders to say, I want to be responsible for this task, or I should be consulted here because my information is going to be key to what you're trying to execute. And every representative from all the lines of business should be there so that that buy-in is across the organization, because if everyone has input and everyone understands that they have had their say in what they think should happen, or at least understanding that their input is valid, that they're going to have buy-in, and the organization itself will understand how best to move forward. To finalize your strategy, it's critical that you start going outside to key stakeholders who understand customer experience. You're going to want to work closely with people like brand and channel managers, content marketers, and experience architects. The one thing we've seen with adoption of customer data platforms is that it's not just a technical endeavor. There's a lot of other tactics or strategies out there that currently have outreach to your customer base from a customer experience standpoint. You want to make sure there's alignment with those existing tactics, or those existing tactics are going to transform and align with your CDP tactics. To ensure a smooth and timely implementation process, make sure that all brand channel and content and project managers, as well as any marketing technologists, IT dev resources, customer experience team members are all involved. I'm naming a lot of different business units and titles, but it's going to take a village to really get up and running and having all the people and departments that you need to be successful with the CDP. And arguably the most important part is, once you've implemented, how are you prepared to start understanding the data or the outputs that you've gotten out of the implementation? A key part and a key reliance will be along your BI, your data teams, your analytics teams. Even your strategists and channel managers need to be re-involved, because you're going to have a plethora of data that's going to tell you a lot of things that you should be doing or you should be changing. And your data teams are going to provide that insight, that analysis, that goodness. Your strategists and channel managers will be taking those recommendations and essentially developing new strategies or tactics to roll out with. So I can't stress enough, I mentioned it in the previous slide, that individuals have to be identified as responsible for tasks to execute upon. We feel that in order to do this, and we use this internally, we guide our customers to use this, is the RACI methodology. It's one that we really embraced and we recommend to all of our customers so that people understand the role in what they're going to do. If you're not familiar with RACI, it really is simplistic. It's those who are responsible, those who are accountable, those who should be consulted, and those should be informed. If you're not familiar with the methodology, those that are responsible and accountable should just be individuals. Studies have shown as well, we have learned ourselves that if you try to have multiple stakeholders responsible for things, they look upon each other to possibly complete that task, and then next thing you know, that task was never completed. So single ownership is very important for those two. But when it comes to consulted and informed, you're going to find that there's a number of people who should be consulted as you execute these tasks through implementation all the way post-implementation to adopting more, as well as those who should be informed. Because when I mention teams like technical teams or data teams, they have to know what's coming or what to expect. So they're key people to keep informed as progress is made. So ultimately, we hope that the goal for the organization is to build or become this digital center of excellence. By now, you've coagulated a key group of individuals who are really not only going to own the CDP, but they're going to be familiar with how it operates and really the inputs and outputs of what makes a CDP tick, so to speak. And by having this digital center of excellence, you're really setting up a group that sets you up for the most success from the enterprise level all the way down to the small business level. So when we talk about the cross-functional teams, when we talk about a digital center of excellence, what we're really talking about is an experienced team with deep customer data knowledge. As we've all shared with you, and as Dustin has highlighted, as I've highlighted in previous slides, is that it takes a lot of inputs, meaning data coming into a CDP, which is normally customer pertinent data. And the importance of understanding the data coming in is that you have to go out and find or get that data that's most important for what you're trying to do. And then it's processed into the CDP. And by being a data expert, you know which data points really help you identify the people that you're looking to remarket or that are important to you. And then when it goes outbound into integrations or sent to other vendors, the expertise there is critical because you know which data points are pertinent for activating that channel in the correct manner that you see fit. As you see here on this chart, there's way more pros than there is cons, but obviously when we make a recommendation or we give you something, it's not always the best fit. So we like to highlight the pros and cons with decisions you might be making.
I'm going to piggyback onto Richard's slide just for a second before I take my topic, because I stumbled across what I think of a pretty good, if not silly, example of why a data center of excellence is such a good idea for this type of thing. I watch a lot of the old Disney movies with my 2 young daughters, especially now with quarantine. And in Sleeping Beauty, there's this part where Maleficent, the evil witch queen, has cursed the princess and is trying to find her now so that she can continue her plot. And so she meets with her minions. It's been 16 years since she cursed her, and she says, okay, well, have you found her? Where have you been looking? What's been going on? And the minions all say, look, we've looked in every cradle in the kingdom for these past 16 years, and we just haven't found her. And Maleficent starts to cackle and realizes what had happened. But that can easily be an example of what happens here, is that you know, what we're doing in marketing can be such a changing landscape, and who the people are that we're trying to target and why can change pretty quickly. And so if you don't have a group of people who, as a role and responsibility in your company, are looking out for, is what we're looking for matching what we're trying to do, then you can easily find yourself looking in cradles for a 16-year-old princess.
Guess I need to watch that one.
It's a classic. So all of this has to be taken at sort of the high level that we're talking about it. Really, when we're talking about staffing needs for a company, so many factors are going to influence what you need and what you're able to do as far as hiring or bringing on agency or reassigning resources. That it's really going to be an individual decision and opportunity for each case. And one of the primary ways that that's going to differ is by the business size, breaking it into high-level groups of enterprise or mid-market or small business. There's different things that you might want to be looking for. For all of them, though, I will say that if you're waiting for the perfect time to implement your CDP, you're going to be waiting forever. There's a bit of this where the right time to implement your CDP is when you have a use for it. And you're never going to have exactly the right pieces or all the right people that we've outlined here today. And that's okay, right? And so what you want to be looking for is opportunities to grow that. So for enterprise, one thing to keep in mind is for each of the roles that we're going to talk about here in a couple of slides, that each role that we're listing out might be a full team that you have. And then you're competing with the other priorities that are with that team. Or for a small business, each of the categories we're talking about might be their own person who's wearing a ton of hats. And in that way, you want to be looking at opportunities to supplement that role with, you know, where's your next hire going to be, where you might be able to alleviate some of that multi-hatness or supplement a strength that you don't have yet. And everywhere in between of each bullet point being a person or some combination of that. So looking at some specific titles for the categories that we were talking about before. With the data source experts, we're really looking at people who understand the marketing operations, the behind the scenes people who run the software that you're using within your organization now, both internally and for your marketing external efforts. People who are able to understand how to get data in and how to get data out of those platforms through APIs, through integrations, through partnerships. Your analytics, BI, data analysts, these are the people who know what data you have now and what state it's in and what it can be useful for. Your experience architect, web development, application engineer, a dozen other titles we don't have listed here. These are going to be the people who are really hands-on keyboard, working in the code, programming and designing and building your interfaces that you use to interact with your customers through your applications and your websites and your mobile apps or IoT apps. You have your customer experts. These are the ones that are going to be working within the Tealium product suite most often, working within Audience Stream to do the configurations and to do those things. And some titles that we see here are customer experience leader, digital strategist, marketing technologist, and finally the channel experts. And again, you see I have a few listed here that were in the data source experts, and that's not a typo. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where this really should be a cyclical process where the data in informs who the profile is, and the profile then informs these systems with more data that they can use to create better experiences or better reports. And then the social marketing, content, paid media, email, these channel managers who own these point solutions for the marketing efforts that you're doing that can have their efforts enhanced by the quality data that can come out of a CDP.
Awesome. So we've covered a lot of titles. We've shown you the 3 slides where we listed some more titles, and we've talked about business units, but really we wanted to dig in and explain a little bit about who these business units are, what their purpose is when it comes to working with Tealium on CDP endeavors. So the first one's going to be the customer experience lead. We see this as really the internal champion who says, hey, executives, this is why we need to execute this strategy with the CDP, or why we need to do this, because all of our customer endeavors in terms of trying to execute and give them a better customer experience, this CDP tactic aligns with that. And we need your buy-in, as well as we need you to help us with other departmental buy-in in order to get this going. We see the brightness at the end of the tunnel. So let's get together. Let's create this better customer experience, and let's move forward together to make it happen. The next individual is going to be your digital strategist. I actually used to be one of these for quite a long time, so I'm a little bit greedy when I talk about these guys. But really, these are the people that help form not only the ideation around what should be done, but ultimately the tactics that should be executed, the what, the where, the why, and really that big picture piece of what's happening. And ultimately coming back around to when we get some goodness around data on, did we guesstimate right, or was that the right tactic overall? Here's why it was or it wasn't, and moving forward from that. So strategists are key people to have in the room when you're working with the CDP, because they're really going to help you develop the use cases that you want to execute ultimately. The next group, the marketing technologists, I would call this the arms, the eyes, the ears of the digital strategist. So they're the ones going in and actually configuring. So in a CDP, there's a lot of configurations that need to happen. And these are your people who understand how not only a CDP works, but maybe how the vendors that you've integrated work. And it could be a coalition of technologists, or it could be a single technologist executing it all. Depending on the size of your company or how you operate, you may be looking for a lot of these people, you may just have one. IT, dev, and engineering is pertinent at all times. I mentioned earlier that you could be keeping them informed because you're rolling out a new integration, and if that port is blocked, well, that integration may not work. If the data is unable to be ingested because IT needs to take time to get it for you from a certain data warehouse, then that's also going to right size your project, and you're going to need to be transparent with them around all the things coming along so that you can work with them and make sure that it happens. Analytics, data, BI, I've talked a lot about their importance, but ultimately they're going to give you all the insights around what's happening, how well is it going, and how do we move forward in the right direction. Last bits, never forget about your email and social media people. These are key channels to a CDP, but also to your business currently today. So it's not just CDP, let's do display, let's do personalization. It's also, let's send some emails. Let's go out on the social media channels and ensure that we have this true data orchestration around all the tactics that you're trying to execute with data, and ensuring that it's hitting all the channels from a single source. So ultimately, this is our 6 steps for staffing for a CDP. I will go in depth about leading what all these steps were, but wanted to close out with a nice recap on what we covered today. And I hope you enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure for us presenting to you, because this is definitely a topic that we get asked frequently.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the presentations.
Enjoy Digital Virtuosity.